Thank you all for joining us for the Transitioning to Graduate School Finding Your Why workshop. Joining us today is Dr. Amanda Hoffman, Visiting Assistant Professor, Educational Psychology, Leadership, and Higher Education. Dr. Hoffman will help us investigate the motivations for pursuing a graduate degree and explore more of our own motives. I'm going to hand it over to them to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you. So just to repeat, my name is Amanda Hoffman. I am a visiting professor in the College of Ed. I teach mostly research methods and statistics, but I'm really interested in graduate student success. And prior to here, I was the president of our GPC, our graduate professional organization at Missouri. And so I'm really interested in kind of understanding motivations, especially for people to go to graduate school. So just a quick agenda for the day. Like I said, we just did a quick introduction, just kind of who's going to graduate school and why, giving a background of motivational theory, and doing an activity. I think that's the best way to kind of get you all thinking about your motivations, and then doing some wrap up and questions. And so who is it that's going to graduate school? So this data is from 2020 from the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Survey, just of graduate students. And so most of our students that took the survey, it's a national representative sample, got their bachelor's sometime between 1972 and 2020, excuse me. With the average being about 2012, which is about when I graduated from my undergraduate degree. You can see here that the age breakdown is mostly between 24 and above, right? And so we have this large group of people going back to school and getting their graduate degree over the age of 30, right? And so it's important to think about why those people are going back to school. And so most students are in our master's degrees. So over 50% are in master's programs, followed by doctoral degrees. And so the difference here, I think, would be when you think about the difference between an EDD would be more professional practice, and a PhD would be more of that doctoral degree in research. But mostly, again, our students in master's programs. Largely female population, over 50% female, and a large amount have dependents. So almost 30% of our students have dependents, mostly dependent children, and mostly of our students are US born. And so while our students that are over the age of 30 with children kind of undertaking this path of going back to graduate school, and so why are they going and why are they staying? There's a couple of reasons why in the literature students say that they are going to graduate school. First, there's this idea of external expectations or guidance from external individuals. So whether that's your family expects you to go to graduate school, or you in your undergraduate program, you met a professor and that professor said that you would be great in a graduate degree. There's this external factor of somebody else is kind of encouraging you or expecting you to go. Second is this idea of personal growth. Graduate work is not easy, right? So you're going to graduate school, it's not a piece of cake. And so a lot of people that are choosing to go to graduate school are doing it because of their own intrinsic value, and they see it as a chance for them to develop individually. They can also, part of that personal growth is also this idea of the intellectual challenge, right? You're reading difficult text each week. You are engaging in discussions with your fellow classmates and your professors about difficult topics and topics that you might not have explored previously. And so some people choose to go to graduate school for that intellectual challenge and that more personal reason. But a lot of what I've seen anecdotally in my experience, but also there's a good amount of this in the literature as well, is that students use graduate school as an opportunity for professional development. right? So many people go back for their master's degree, whether that means that they can get a more advanced position within their company, or it provides them a path for a more advanced position somewhere else. But additionally, that professional development, a lot of times, an advanced degree will lead to increased pay. And so that is it's a money is a good motivator for a lot of people. And so an increased amount of pay is a lot of the reason why some students are going to back to graduate school. And so in some of the literature that I read, and this happened to me personally, there was really not another option. When I graduated my undergraduate degree, I was 21, and I kind of didn't want to get a real job. And so I really loved school. And so what I said was like, let's go back to school and figure it out. And while I was going back, I had the privilege of being able to do that. Because I have a very good support system. And while I was going back to school, I kind of figured out what I really wanted to do, and that led me to the other graduate degrees that I have. And so if there aren't any other options after graduating from a bachelor's degree, some students decide to then pursue their graduate degree. And in some of the literature that I read, they talked about delaying other options, whether that be certain military service or any kind of other options that you might want to delay so that you attend graduate school. And so then there is an issue in graduate retention, right? And so keeping graduates, once they enter a graduate program, what makes people really stay in that graduate program? And so some of that is this idea of that there's this sense of duty, and it's something that you started and now you wanted to finish it, right? And you feel like if you don't finish it, that you have missed out. Some people just enjoy it. I personally really love school. And so if I could go back and get another PhD, I totally would. I know that sounds crazy to people that I would write another dissertation, but I love school so much that I would actually do that. And so I do truly enjoy my time in school. When else are you able to just like go to classes and learn new things? It's a great time. And then this last one is kind of this idea of the sunken cost. So if you've heard of the sunken cost fallacy, it's this idea that you've invested so much time in something, or so much effort, or so much money in something, that you should just finish it because you've already invested so much in there. And so as a person who studies motivational theory, I really want students to be here because they're enjoying their time and they're actively invested in the work that they're doing. And so understanding that motivation, and there's a variety of different theories that can explain the motivation for you to attend graduate school. There's expectancy value theory, self-efficacy theory, which I personally spend my time kind of researching. This idea of self-determination theory, achievement goal theory, and interest. And so I'm teaching currently a whole course about motivational theory, and so we cover a lot of these ideas, and so we won't cover them here, but I really want to talk about these concepts that are involved in a lot of these motivational theories. First of which being perceptions of skill. And so a lot of times this is talked about as perceptions of competence. And so it's your perceived ability to be successful, whether that be in your classes, whether that be socially on campus, whether that be in your research, kind of in your professional organizations, and with your advising and any research that you're doing. And so students, we'll get into the implications of what adaptive motivation looks like a little bit later, but these kind of concepts will help you to be successful in your graduate work. Next is this idea of the value of the task. And so people hold different tasks with different values, right? So I'm not a big, I don't like to go to the gym. It's not something that I value very much, but I love to read. And so when we're thinking about kind of making these decisions of what we're going to do, the value of the task that we're given or that we have to accomplish is really important when we are thinking about the motivation we have to do that. Next is the impact of our environment. And so there is a lot of contextual concepts that come in when you're thinking about your motivation. Like I said before, many of our students are taking care of children, or they are married, or they have full-time jobs. And so their motivation to complete their classwork or do something for graduate school can be affected by these other outside influences in their life, because they could want to do their classes, but if they've been up for 9 hours at work and then fed their family and things like that, it does have a direct impact on their motivation for graduate school. And then lastly, a lot of motivational work talks about the needs of the individual. And so what is it that you in that moment or over time or long term need? And so the biggest three I'm going to focus on, and when we talk about needs of individuals, the biggest three come from this self-determination theory. And so our biggest three needs are competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And so we need to feel like we can be successful at things. We need to feel like we have some control over the things that we're doing. And we need to make these connections with other people. And so when we're thinking about our motivation for graduate school, how can we connect those three kind of basic needs that we have to our graduate program? And so if we have that adaptive, I like to say adaptive patterns of motivation. I'm again, like I said, I'm teaching the motivational theory class right now, and we talked a little bit in our class last night about moralizing motivation. And so I think a lot of times we say that motivation is either good or bad. And I don't like that I don't want you to think of this as motivation as a punitive concept, right? It's flexible, it's dynamic, it's not ever consistent. And so if you're not motivated on Monday, maybe you will be on Thursday. And so these kind of adaptive patterns of motivation is how I like to focus it a little bit more. And so they have a variety of these really important outcomes for graduate students. There's a lot of research, if you've heard of Angela Duckworth and her studies on grit and resilience. Having adaptive patterns of motivation, so high confidence or high perceptions of skill, then you are more likely to persist through difficult experiences. And so a lot of times our graduate students are high achievers. So they were high achievers in high school, they were high achievers in college, and they get to graduate school, and maybe the first time they write a paper, their professor kind of rips it apart, right? I remember when I first got to my doc program, I wrote a grant proposal, and my advisor, it just came back all blue with his comments. And so if you don't have these adaptive patterns of motivation, then that might have caused me to quit the program, right? It was October of my first year in Missouri. I didn't know anyone, I was by myself. And so if I didn't have this perception that I could do it, I might have dropped out right then. You have these people with a higher motivation have higher satisfaction in their academic program. And so they are more willing to engage in their, they feel like they've picked the right program for them. They are happy with their professors. They're happy with their colleagues. Things like that are all outcomes of this higher motivation. One thing that I really want to focus on, and one of the workshops that I'm doing with the College of Ed as well, is this idea of graduate student mental health and well-being. And I know that the Grad Academy and the Graduate College is really focused on mental health and well-being as well. And so students with these adaptive patterns have improved mental health outcomes. So they have lowered stress, their anxiety is a little, like they have more, this adaptive patterns of motivations are kind of protective factors for these mental health conditions like anxiety and high stress and depression. Because again, going back to this idea of persisting through difficult experiences, if you get a bad grade on a paper or your research grant doesn't get funded, that you aren't defaulting to these mental health conditions, right? It's not as effective on your emotions as it might have been if you weren't as highly motivated. Again, retention of students and finishing their degree is really something that I think a lot of graduate students struggle with, is getting through those classes and then either writing a dissertation or writing a thesis. And so getting through their program can really be supported by encouraging this motivation and kind of finding out why you're doing something and the intensity in which you're doing it. Also here, higher engagement. So whether that means within your classroom or within your classes, or just on campus or with research or anything like that. And so if you're not motivated or you don't feel comfortable in a space, right, you're not going to go to office hours. You're not going to speak with your program cohorts or and other colleagues within your department. And so building these motivational strategies will really be helpful to you engaging in your program, which will then kind of compound to these successful academic outcomes. Increased creativity. And so again, if any of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so you need to fulfill these kind of base level needs of physiological safety, food, friendship and companionship, things like that, before you can reach this idea of what's called self-actualization. And when you get to that level of self-actualization, that's when you can have these creative ideas, right? You can't come up with this great new research idea if you're afraid about your classes or if you're afraid of where you can eat, things like that. And so having these motivational strategies and kind of reaching those basic needs of, especially within self-determination theory of competence, autonomy, and relatedness, that's when you can kind of bring out these creative ideas and kind of think of new innovative research ideas. And then the last one here is self-regulated academic behaviors. I know that when I was an undergraduate, I procrastinated really bad. It was always, you were writing a paper at the end of the night to be handed in tomorrow. And so building my confidence through like self-efficacy work and building my motivation and kind of understanding why I was in graduate school helped me to eliminate those procrastination behaviors and be more self-regulated. And so coming up with a schedule of when I need to work on classes, when I needed to do research, when I needed to just take a break and focus on myself. Those are also kind of questions that you need to answer when you are figuring out your motivation for graduate school. And so what we're going to go through is an activity of focusing on this idea of the 5 whys. And so I'm teaching a first-year seminar in the College of Education for first-year students that are coming out of high school. And I think a lot of the material that I'm teaching in that first-year seminar is really related to transitioning into graduate school, right? And so figuring out why you're here is the good first step. And so we use an open access book about college success, and they talk about this idea of the 5 whys, which was created by Sakichi Toyota. And it's used a lot in manufacturing and industry to find root causes of problems, which can then lead to solutions. And so if you, in terms of manufacturing, if you just say, the belt is broken, right? You can't find a solution until you figure out why the belt is broken. And so while going to graduate school isn't a problem per se, it is something that you need to figure out, like a path to success, right? Whether that be the solution here is, I guess, graduation, right? And so by understanding why things are happening, we can understand how to create that clearer path for success. And so what's important to note when you're doing this 5 whys activity is that this is not a silver bullet solution for everything. First off, it may take more than 5 steps, right? And so that process, you don't have to limit yourself to 5 whys. But the big part here is that you must be honest and reflective. Because if you're not honest about your reasoning for being here, then you can't ever get to that root cause. And without that root cause, we can't find that path to success. And so what we're going to do, and what I would hope to do this, so we'll spend like 5 to 10 minutes doing this individually, and then we'll come back together and kind of have a discussion about the activity. And so this is kind of what it looks like. You'll have 5 whys. And so the first question is asking, why are you in graduate school? Right? But you can't answer, that's not something that could be answered in a short sentence. And so I'm going to show you an example from the Baldwin book of what this will look like. But the example is for a college student. And so this example starts with, why are you in college? And it goes, I'm in college to earn a degree in speech pathology. Right? So you would say, why are you in graduate school? I'm in graduate school to get a degree in educational psychology. And then you use the ending of your first statement to fill in the question of your second statement. So if I said, why am I in graduate school? I am in graduate school to get a degree in educational psychology. Why do you want a degree in educational psychology? I want to be able to teach statistics. Why do you want to teach statistics? Because I believe that statistics is the way to understand the phenomena in the world around us. And kind of using the end of your first sentence to fill in the next part of this 5 whys. And so I can put a file in the chat. Oop, it's not here. I don't know that I can put a file in the chat. Hold on 1 second. Add to my Google Drive. Sorry, y'all. We're gonna do something like this. And so I can, I have a form that I can put in the chat. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and put that in the chat. And then
Okay.
we will work on that for like 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then come back and kind of discuss what your kind of first couple statements looked like. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go through mine, and then we can kind of have a discussion here about the steps that you all took to work through these questions and how that kind of helped you to reflect on your purpose here at UNLV and in graduate school generally. And so when I was thinking about my time in my degree program, I thought about why, so I guess I could have changed this to why did I go to graduate school instead of why am I in graduate school? And so I went to get my degree in educational psychology, right? That's our pretty basic starting point of what are we doing here? And so why did I want to get a degree in educational psychology? And so I wanted to be able to help teachers to motivate students. And because I wanted to do that because I personally believe that motivation is the foundation of a good learning experience, because you can't learn without being motivated to like actively pay attention and engage with the material. And so why do I believe that motivation is that foundation is because I had a professor in my master's program that taught the motivation and cognition class, and he explained why that the concepts were so important. And so I want to kind of emulate what he did for me in the classroom, because it kind of changed the course of my life. When I was in that master's program, I was in a master's program for higher ed, and I thought that I wanted to work in campus recreation and kind of do intramural sports for the rest of my life. And then I got into this class and I found how much it was one of my favorite classes I've ever taken. And so he kind of changed the course of my life. And so that's kind of what led me into getting that graduate degree. And so there was some kind of that intrinsic motivation. I really enjoy what I do and I love working with students. But there was that external encouragement from a professor that said, you can do this, and what can you do to get to this place? And so there's a combination there between external and internal factors that led me to go to graduate school. And so does anyone want to share what they had in terms of their 5 whys, or at least 1 or 2 whys? Okay.
I can go ahead too. I filled it out and I'm in grad school, but yeah, I agree with Nev. You can type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Why are you in graduate school? I responded with I'm in graduate school because of job security and network. And then why do you want to have job security and network? I want to stay ahead of the curve, and it's pretty cliche, but it's not what you know, and it's about who you know. I think network is really important, and I try to make connections, and I really met nice and cool people that I can make an impact in their life, and that they can make an impact in my life too. And why do you want to stay ahead of the curve? And my answer for that was because of COVID. Like, it wiped everything off, and I think there is a correlation with like overcoming challenges as a grad student versus like an undergrad student. I think grad students are, like you said in your presentation too, I think they're more likely to come up with solutions and not give up. So these are some of the whys that I put down, but I'm looking forward to hearing from other people too.
Go ahead, Trisha.
Okay, hi, I'm Trisha, and I'm healthcare administration for my MHA degree program. Why I went to grad school, my first why was because I wanted to pursue a higher position. Why did I want to pursue a higher position? So I can manage more systems in the healthcare. And why did I want to manage all those systems? And it's because I wanted to change those systems. And the third why is, why did I want to change those systems? It's so that I can address the inequities and build a better culture in the workplace. And my why for that is people are like suffering, and I've experienced it, and I've also experienced toxic workplace, so I wanted to change that.
And so just to kind of bring this back around to the implications is that understanding those whys will help you to lead to these outcomes, because having going back to what Trisha had said about having that personal experience and kind of understanding the core purpose of why you are here will kind of help you to set the values and the boundaries that you have within graduate school. And I think the biggest one here is the 2 biggest ones, excuse me, are this persistence through difficult experiences and improved mental health outcomes. Because like for Trisha, somebody in healthcare management and like changing systems is going to be a slow process, right? It's not going to something that's going to be changing overnight. And so there can be those times where you feel like I kind of just want to give up, and like what is the point of going through this graduate school experience? But because you have that core kind of value in your program, and you have this long-term goal that you're trying to reach, that you are going to persist through those times where you feel like maybe it's not worth it, or maybe it's maybe I should be focused on something else. And it's protecting you from those negative kind of affective beliefs of when something does go wrong, it doesn't just go automatically to stress and anxiety, but saying like, oh, if I do something like this a little differently, it'll help me to reach this goal. And so kind of helping you to find your purpose helps you to push through those um roadblocks, like Trisha just said in the chat, of like looking past there and kind of seeing where can I get to if I find these motivations. And so that is all that I had in terms of presentation wise, but I think I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because this is a motivation is so individual, and finding your purpose and finding your why is something that can be unique to you as an individual. And so this 5 why activity might have worked for me or somebody else, but maybe finding other strategies that can help you to find your purpose in both on campus and in your field can be really helpful for your success in graduate school. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, Amanda. And yes, if anybody has questions, please type them in the chat or unmute yourself. We have some time left, so it'll be great to hear from you guys.
I have a question because I literally went through whatever you said, and it's like a mental health battle, essentially, kind of like questioning whether or not you're able to like take on the challenge to overcome that roadblock. What kind of like mindset do you usually like put yourself in? Because I know at this point it's kind of like it's how you think and perceive what you're going to do in a situation instead of like, because I could like just dig myself in a rabbit hole or I can do something about it. You know, like what kind of things, like tools do you usually go to when those things come?
In terms of roadblocks and like
Yes.
maintaining motivation.
And like self-doubt and everything like that.
Okay. Yeah. So I am a personally, I am a self-efficacy like researcher. And so self-efficacy is kind of developing motivation through 4 different sources. It's your mastery experiences. Oh, sorry, my camera is weirdly on the bottom of my screen, and so my hand gets in the way all the time. So your mastery experiences with success, your vicarious experiences, looking at other people be successful, verbal support, and physiological responses. And so what I try to do there is when you're having that kind of imposter syndrome, and I am full transparency, I am a person that suffers with mental health conditions and I have anxiety. And so when I know that when I was in graduate school and I kind of got to that point where I was kind of spiraling in terms of self-doubt or imposter syndrome, what I found myself doing was going back and kind of looking at things that I had done successfully previously. So when I wrote that grant proposal and my advisor kind of ripped it up, what I did is I went back and looked at a paper that I had written that had gotten an A, or talked to using vicarious experiences. So I think a vicarious experience is like watching someone else be successful. And so that's where I think the importance of building relationships. And so when we talked about that need for relatedness in self-determination theory and like having those that belongingness and relationships with other students on campus and in your program can really help and build your motivation, because you can see like, oh, somebody else in my program or somebody else that's in my situation got a grant, or they were successful doing this. And so it kind of brings you back to, I don't want to say reality, but kind of like to the surface, and kind of like take a step back and breathe and look back on things that you were successful on.
Thank you. And I think Jessica had a question, maybe. She raised her hand for a bit, but Jessica, did you have a question? I think Trisha has one more question.
Oh, no, I'm good. I was just clapping. Thank you for that.
Oh, okay.
Like I said earlier, graduate school is not easy, but you all deserve to be here. And you've all worked really hard, and the professors in your department and have picked you for a reason to be here. And so I think that that's also a good thing to remember, that that you are worthy of being here. So I'm a big affirmations person. So I actually have something in my office that says like, good morning, you belong here, you are worthy, like you have worked hard to get here. So kind of just like reaffirming kind of when I get into that area of self-doubt, that I mean, I did the whole dissertation, you know what I mean? Somebody thought it was good enough for the pass. And so it's just remembering that you have worked hard to get here, and your ideas and your thoughts about changing things for the future are worth it.
Thank you for sharing these, Dr. Hoffman. I want to ask a question. I don't know if it's going to make sense or not, but how do you balance like comparing yourself to others and not comparing yourself to others? You know, like, do you just completely not compare yourself to others, or is there like a balance to it? Because it's kind of like, okay, like this is what my definition of success, but where do people rank with that kind of definition? Or you just completely ignore others?
Not the best person to ask that question, because I am one of the least competitive people. So I did the Clifton Strengths Quest once, and I did my whole 35 or 34, and competition was like 30. So I'm not a very competitive person. So I do definitely use other people as reference of what success kind of looks like, but remembering that their journey is not my journey. And so that kind of, I'm a big believer in comparing to yourself. So like I'm gonna keep referencing that grant proposal that got ripped apart in my first year. But then when I wrote my dissertation proposal, the same advisor, the same person on my committee had no changes, right? And so you can see your own growth. And so I don't know that it's, I don't think it's fair to compare yourself to other people, because like I said, no individual's experiences are the same. And so I'm a big believer in that competition. And there's some literature that says that competition is actually demotivating, right? Because like something that Jessica said in the chat is that it's easy to get that like nerves and stress around working with other people. And so just again, remembering that your own growth, I think that's the best way to reference success in graduate school, is that if one day if on the first day here you wrote a paper and it wasn't good, and then next year you wrote a paper and it was better, you're growing. And I think that's the part of graduate school, is that, and this is the part that I like about graduate school, and the way that I teach my classes is that tests, we don't, like, my job here as an instructor and as a faculty member is for you to understand the material. And so it's not, do you understand the material better than X or better than person Y? It's just like, do you have a mastery of the material? And so focusing, have you heard about the difference between performance and mastery goals?
No.
Okay, so a performance goal is that I want to get an A on this paper, right? A mastery goal says I want to learn how to write a paper. And so I always tell my students, if you succeed in that mastery goal of learning how to write a paper, it's going to be good. And so focusing on the skills and the techniques that are needed, then that will lead you to a high performance, rather than focusing on the performance itself, because those performance goals lead to those negative outcomes of high stress, right? You're like, I need to be number one, or I need to get published in this best journal. And academia has a lot of those kind of performance oriented goals. It's a performance oriented goal structure, but in meeting those large of like, I have to publish 6 articles by the time I get tenure, or 12 articles by the time I get tenure. If you learn the mastery goals of how do I write a good method section, that's the skill. And then like, let me master how to write method sections of papers that will then lead to the outcome of publishing 6 or 12 times. So I like to focus on the stepwise process of reaching a goal rather than just the end goal.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very nice way to look at things, and it actually opened up a different perspective on how I should look things to and keep that in the back of my mind. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Any more questions before we end today's session? I think that's about it from today. So before we end today's session, we would like to thank to our presenter for sharing their time and expertise with us today, and thank to our participants for joining us today. Before you all log off, please fill out the survey that I just dropped in the chat if you can. That helps us improve the workshops that we provide. And thank you so much once again, Dr. Hoffman, for being here and taking your time. Yeah, and thank you for everyone's time.
I'll put my email in the chat too if you ever want to, if you need anything, or like Navina said, I am doing some workshops for the College of Ed about other topics. And so if you're interested in any of those other workshops, just email me and let me know.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hoffman, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Bye-bye.